Nintendo Switch to physical games being more expensive. We're calling this out now because that is not true. That did not actually happen. He's making it up. We talked about this earlier. Let's see, ReviewTechUSA 2. He's live. Nintendo Switch 2 sales have absolutely cratered. Not true. Yeah, they exploded after Pokepia's release, actually. Nintendo worst anti-consumer policy is being killed off. What is he even talking about? Okay, hang on.
Nintendo's Zinger.
Here we go. Okay. Let's see what Rich has to say. Let's get the window brought up here. Okay. What? It's not right. Okay. Nintendo Switch 2 sales have absolutely cratered. Okay, he uploaded this today. 2 days ago. Yeah, absolutely cratered. Yeah, okay. Is that why the stock jumped up after Pokepia's release? Is that why everyone's playing it? Is that why the game is sold out everywhere? Like, is that why, Rich? So yeah, so he's probably going to cite the Bloomberg article, which I already debunked in this channel. So Rich doesn't know what he's talking about. He's reviewing tech after I, who am more of an expert than he is, already debunked it. Like, and again, everybody knows this. Like, everyone, like, Arlo straight up deleted his video talking about it because his audience, like, let him know that, like, oh yeah, this has been debunked by Harman Smith. Like, so he deleted it immediately and apologized. Rich has not apologized, and I noticed this a lot about him whenever he does these kind of clickbait articles, is that he always does this thing where he's like, oh yeah, this is totally true, man. This sparks doom for Nintendo, man. And then you look at it, and like a couple of days later, debunked. It was never real, and then he just moves on. And sometimes, the very next day, he's making videos saying the exact opposite of what he said to begin with. Rich Tomorrow is not a meme, but it's like how he actually is. But
it's time for men.
I just wanted some sauce on those zingers.
Who are these people?
All right, everybody, how are you doing? I hope you're having an awesome
Classic
day. The
gameplay stream,
you
wow.
are looking at is from my homemade Steam machine. It actually has an RX 7600 GPU, which is pretty much on target for what these...
How much money does he spend on these things? Like, just think about the logistics of it. So this guy owns multiple gaming PCs. He owns multiple consoles. He owns, like, multiple, like, Steam Decks and, like, those kinds of, like, worthless handheld PC things, like Switch knockoffs. Like, how many of these things does he need? What's he talking about? Like, oh, it's running on my homemade Steam machine. Why would you ever need that? Just buy a Switch 2. Just buy a console.
Steam machine is going to have. So the performance that you see above, I have all of the frame rate and frame timing at the very top of the screen, is not too far off from what you're going to get inside of Valve's upcoming box. So keep those numbers in mind when you're taking a look at gameplay. This is Dead Island 2, and the results were interesting. So hope you enjoy the gameplay footage.
It looks
and I hope
like
you look
shit.
forward to that
Like,
upcoming
it looks
Steam
really bad,
machine video. And
this game looks awful. Like, Dead Island 2, isn't this game, like, first of all, wasn't it like a really disappointing release? And like, it looks awful. It looks generic. Doesn't look like it's running all that well. This is getting mogged by Wii games from 2006. Okay, this game looks like shit on your super expensive homemade Steam machine. But
also, real quick, make sure you subscribe to this channel, ReviewTechUSA,
Absolutely
leave a
not.
like
Absolutely.
and a comment, and also check out my ASMR channel called Tech25 ASMR. I'll have links to everything I mentioned below in the description and top pinned comment. So in terms of sales figures, in the beginning, the Nintendo Switch 2 had a very strong start. In just the first...
Okay. This is a cope. Okay, we're on the first year. They released the sales numbers, I think, early in March. Was it March or February or something? I think it was February. Yeah, they revealed the sales numbers in February, and it was like, yeah, 17 million units sold. It's doing really, really well. Okay, so no matter what these guys say, is that like, oh yeah, it initially did very, very well. We've gotten the numbers recently, and it's still doing very, very well. Like, again, it never stopped doing very, very well. And yet they always come out and they're just be like, but it's slowing down now. Yeah, Pokapia is doing nothing for it. Like you're not convincing anybody, Rich. You don't know what you're talking about.
4 months on sale, the Switch 2 sold 10 million units, and an insane 3.5 million units of the Switch 2 were sold in its first 4 days on the market. But we started to see trouble in paradise around this past holiday season, with the Switch 2 not outselling the PlayStation 5.
Well, okay, wrong. So the PS5 had massive sales and discounts. So it sold more, quote unquote, but like what you have to understand is that it's a console at the end of its life that is getting like heavy discounts, and the Switch is like brand new. So most people got who are interested in getting the Switch 2 got it right away, and the PS5 had like massive sales cuts over the holiday season. So like this is a giant nothing burger, and it's not a big deal. Like Switch 2 absolutely mogged PS5 this holiday season when it came to like actual games and when it actually came to like building up the brand. Like the PS5 is just a sinking ship, and it always has been. But
that things are getting even worse for the sales figures of the Nintendo Switch 2, with Nintendo cutting a third of production due to
wrong. So that's the Takashi Mochizuki article that we debunked last night. That claim has been debunked. So we know that like they made it up. We know that like, you know, several other people in the industry have come out disputing it. Like Nintendo themselves have come out disputing it. Like there is no evidence to say that's true. So the fact that like Rich is making this video now, oh no, this was 2 days ago. The fact that he made this video just shows that he didn't do his due diligence and he didn't do his research, because I was able to look at this article, and because of my insider knowledge, because of my big brain, because of my history in finance, because of my business pedigree, because of everything I know, I was able to realize immediately that like, yeah, this is fake. And that turned out to be true. Rich was wrong and I was right.
Or U.S. sales. This comes from Kotaku.com. I'll read it to you, then we'll discuss. According to
Kotaku is straight up blacklisted by Nintendo because they told people to pirate Metroid Dread. They are the last studio you would ever the last outlet you should ever listen to when it comes to Nintendo coverage.
A report with Bloomberg, Nintendo is dramatically lowering its production plans for the Switch 2 after weak U.S. sales. The paper says that sales of the console over the holiday season fell short of expectations, and as a result, Nintendo is slashing the number of Switch 2s it plans to build this quarter by a third, from 6 million to 4 million. Cutting the production of a console by 2 million units is just wild. Now, if you remember in February, Nintendo's stock fell off a cliff, and many attributed the—
Wow, February. Yeah, and what's happened since then, Rich? Pokapia came out, and it spiked back up. I find it curious that you're not bringing this up, but okay.
This drop to tariffs and the increasing cost of RAM and GPUs.
Wrong.
But with the news today that Nintendo was cutting a third of their production, maybe investors saw something else coming down the horizon. And with Nintendo cutting Switch—
No. The stock price didn't drop until the Bloomberg article was published. So what happened is that the Bloomberg article was published. Investors who don't follow this as close as I do, panic sold, and eventually it became clear that like nothing was actually happening. You know, that's basically what happened.
To production by a third, shares of the company fell 6.3% in Tokyo. And even in January 2026, the soon-to-be 6-year-old PlayStation 5 outsold the much newer Switch 2. And it being outsold by a much older system is a big red flag that people shouldn't ignore. And this seems to be a US exclusive issue where the Switch 2 isn't.
Yeah. So it seems like the US is kind of like the last stand of Nintendo hate, because traditionally I would say like Europe was like a big barrier of entry because Sony was more globalized. They were able to release JRPGs there, and like they had like more of a marketing push in other countries. But that's like slowly been changing over the years to the point where like I think the only European country that still has like an obsessive hatred of Nintendo is probably the UK. And even that's not true to the same extent it used to be. So, like, again, the U.S. is kind of the last bastion of Nintendo hate. And I think the big reason for that is because everything is centralized here. PlayStation, like, focuses all their marketing here, and that's why we still have like these weird articles and these weird claims coming out. They're like, oh yeah, nobody bought the Switch 2 this holiday season, which pretty obviously isn't true. But
selling. In Japan, for example, Switch 2 demand often exceeds how much supply Nintendo has, and in Europe, it's not as popular there, but it's still actually selling pretty well, with the PS5 continuing to outsell the Switch 2, like I mentioned before. And strategist Amir Enzvarde of Asymmetric Advisors, I've tried so hard to say that correctly a billion times, he said this hardware shortfall in its first year during its big holiday season is awful news. And he's also quoted here saying, clearly the software lineup has been poor. And I agree.
Nope. Again, these analysts don't seem to understand like how big Mario Kart actually is. They don't really seem to understand the nature of an evergreen title. Like, they really seem to think that like Mario Kart was just going to sell like what it was going to sell like day one, and that was it, and like we would move on. That's not how this works. Mario Kart and I think Pokapia, and maybe to a lesser extent Donkey Kong Bonanza, like all of those are going to be like evergreen titles that people are buying and playing for years. Okay, Mario Kart World, I think, is going to sell upwards of like 50 million units, probably more than that. And like Pokapia may sell upwards of 30 million. Like it's been a huge success. Huge success. And yet the analysts are sitting there trying to tell you that like there's nothing to play, that there's no software lineup. Like it's a complete cope, like absolutely a complete cope. Like if you've seen my streams over the past year, how I spend like 8 hours a night playing Switch 2, how many games there are on this console, how much there is to play. It's just completely wrong.
As of now, here are the exclusives for the Switch 2. We have Mario Kart World. These are one.
Okay, exclusives. Okay, this is the giant cope of it. This is the thing that they always do, is that like conveniently multiplats are counted as like titles on like every other console, but like Switch, they're never brought up or addressed. So they just ignore the Switch 1 games, they just ignore the third-party games, and just only talk about the exclusives to push an agenda. And besides, the exclusives are good enough to carry the console anyway. But like, it's such an insane double standard. Like, they really want to push this myth that people only buy Nintendo consoles for Nintendo games, which is something that was invented to kind of justify the existence of PlayStation and to downplay Nintendo. So like, they're always doing this thing where like, well, like Mario and Zelda are good, but Nintendo doesn't have a whole lot yet else, does it? and like the simple answer is like, well, no, they do. They do have a whole lot else. I have played Tales of Berseria. I have played Resident Evil Requiem. I am going to play Pragmata. Like there are like a lot of games that have come out in the past several months that I've been really, really into. Right. So like the idea that the Switch 2 doesn't have any games is just objectively wrong.
That are out in the market right now. Fast Fusion, which that's not going to move units.
Right.
Nintendo Switch.
It doesn't need to move units. What are you talking about? Like, Mario Kart World is the system seller. Fast Fusion is a lower budget niche title for people who want like a more intensive, like futuristic racing. Like, again, it doesn't need to sell units. Again, this is a problem with this kind of commentary. This assumption that everything needs to be a system seller. No, we already have the system seller. Everything else is just appealing to its like different audiences.
Switch 2 Welcome Tour, also not going to move units. Survival Kids. Donkey Kong Bonanza, there's a good exclusive for you. Drag X Drive, just know. Hyrule Warriors.
Wait. Did he skip Mario Kart? I think he straight up skipped Mario Kart.
Move units. Survival Kids. Donkey Kong Fast Fusion 2. We have Mario Kart World. These are ones that are out in the market right now. Fast.
Okay, he did say Mario Kart World. Okay, so he did downplay it though. He just kind of said it and then moved on. And then just ignored the reality that Mario Kart World is like, Mario Kart is one of the biggest video game franchises in the world. And there's just this very weird refusal from like analysts and the industry to acknowledge it. Because Mario Kart Wii did outsell Grand Theft Auto 4, right? That's not something that comes up a lot. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I think will outsell Grand Theft Auto 5 long term, because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is going to stay relevant on Switch 2 after Grand Theft Auto 5 sales tank after 6 comes out, right? Like, I do see Mario Kart 8 being one of those games that sells indefinitely. We're seeing like, we keep like these guys just don't understand like how well certain Nintendo games do and like what actually moves units. They seem to think M-rated AAA games are what does it, and that's not true at all. And it needs to be brought up.
Fusion, which that's not going to move units. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, also not going to move units. Survival Kids, Donkey Kong Bonanza, there's a good exclusive for you. Drag X Drive, just know.
Drag X Drive is phenomenal. Fuck you, Rich.
Hyrule Warriors, Age
Awesome.
of Imprisonment. Okay, fine. There's one. Kirby Air Riders.
What? There's one? What are you talking about? You just acknowledged that Bonanza was good. Like, Mario Kart World exists. Like, again, like he's reading off this huge list of games and acting like they don't matter. But even he has to concede, like, oh yeah, Bonanza's good. Hyrule Warriors is good. Mario Kart World is good. Like, it's just like, what are you talking about, Rich? The console isn't even a full year old yet.
The recently released Pokemon Pocopia, and everything else here is on the horizon. Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, Fire Emblem, Fortune's Weave, Duskbloods from Software, Pokemon Winds and Waves, that's coming out in 2027, and Splatoon Raiders doesn't even have a date yet. And what is also missing there? The Switch 2 did not come out with a new Super Mario exclusive, which
nobody
is
fucking cares. Enough with like the 3D Mario thing. It's like, is he a Nintendo Land fan? Does he think that that's all anyone plays? First of all, like, doesn't Mario Kart count? Like, it's, but anyway, like, you're really gonna tell me that like the Switch 2 is like doomed to failure because it doesn't have a 3D Mario? Like, you're really gonna try and do this thing? Like, we didn't launch with the 3D Mario either. We didn't get like Mario Galaxy until the end of 2007. Like, it's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? This is just a downright cope, and I'm very tired of hearing about this. Like, because these people really seem to think that like any other Nintendo franchise like isn't as relevant as Mario. Like they really think that like nothing else will move units, nothing else can sell consoles, nothing else is relevant, and it's just so out of touch and ridiculous. It's insane.
Now, there have been other Nintendo consoles that didn't launch with a Mario exclusive. That's not what I'm saying. But even the original Switch, even before the system was released, what did we see a trailer for? Super Mario Odyssey. Did we get a trailer from Nintendo before the Switch 2 was released of any kind of Odyssey-esque game?
Mario Kart World, retard. Like, any kind of Odyssey-esque game. What are you talking about? Bonanza is the Odyssey-esque game. What are you talking about? Well, that doesn't have Mario in it. Like, what are you talking? What? It's just a dumb argument. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, there was nothing like Odyssey. Like, it only had Mario Kart World and Bonanza, and like it just come on.
Anything like that? No. And then add in how third-party games are doing for the Nintendo Switch 2. There's even educated rumors that Resident Evil Requiem didn't sell super well on the Nintendo.
Wrong. Straight up wrong. It's like it did very well on Switch 2. Okay? Like, that has been confirmed a long time ago. He's straight up making shit up. Like, this is objectively wrong. I played Requiem on Switch 2. Like, the game was shit. Like, Leon ruined the entire game. Like, it was broken and nowhere near as good as Resident Evil 4, but like, I finished it, like, and it sold well. What are you talking about? It didn't do as well on Switch 2. That's not true. It outperformed the Xbox version. Like, that's been confirmed. Like, so again, this is just a delusional cope from like ReviewTechUSA to try and push the myth that third-party games don't sell on Switch 2 when they absolutely do.
Nintendo Switch 2. And when the system first launched, there were third-party developers that said game sales were below their lowest expectations.
Wrong. You never cited like any names. No major titles were brought up, and I have demonstrated several times over the months, because this myth has persisted, that like several third-party games have done well on the console. Okay, this is just incorrect reporting. Like, it's just completely wrong. Like, you're just making stuff up. Like, oh, well, I read it in an article, but it must be true. Like, basic reality has debunked you, Rich. Like, reality has debunked you. But
for certain titles. And say what you want, but when I first heard that, I'm like, man, that is a sign of things to come. So Nintendo needs to pay attention to that, because if they're in this situation where third-party games aren't moving on their platform, again, they need to be very worried. So do I think that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be a failure and it's going to be the next Wii U? Absolutely not. I'm not.
The Wii U was a success. It brought about several of Nintendo's most iconic games ever and ushered in the age of the Switch. Without the Wii U, the Switch just does not exist. So
saying that either. But can it be like the 3DS to what the DS was sales-wise? Like, could the Switch be the...
So that's the moving goalpost now. I've seen a couple of people bring this up. Like, the DS was the best thing ever, but the 3DS just couldn't live up to it. Like, that's the point where we're at now, where people are just trying to say it's going to be like a mid-tier success instead of like, like the best-selling thing ever. And I just don't think that's going to be the case. Like, honestly, I don't think it really matters how much the Switch 2 sells, because I've talked about this before, but like the Switch 1 is still very relevant. One of the things ReviewTechUSA skirted over in this video is that the Switch 1 is still getting new games. So the Switch 1 is still very relevant. It's still getting supported. People are still buying games on it. The financial reports confirm this. So the Switch 1 and the Switch 2 are coexisting. And the Switch 2 is not a replacement for Switch 1. And this is something that like ReviewTechUSA is really overlooking and not bringing up at all. That 8 million people bought Pokemon Legends EA on Switch 1 because there was such a huge, heavy player base of people who had not upgraded yet. It's that's pretty typical. I think that's kind of what we see out of. Like that's what we've been seeing lately, is that the Switch 2 is coexisting with Switch 1, and like they're helping each other succeed. So if you buy games on Switch 1 and then upgrade to Switch 2, you can upgrade your games and keep playing as you always have. And I'm sure that's going to continue with the Switch 3 and onward. They have your games are tied to your Nintendo account now, and I don't think like replacing your hardware is going to be as essential as it was traditionally. Like I think that's kind of where Nintendo has moved towards in recent years. So this whole hullabaloo about console sales, first of all, it's ignoring the actual numbers. The console's doing very, very well. But second of all, it's ignoring the reality that Nintendo is coming off one of their highest periods ever, one of their most profitable periods of all time. And obviously the general trend is upward. Some games are still selling more than theirs, sure, but they're flash in the pan successes and they don't have as wide of a net. They're not capable of innovating as much, and they can't stand the test of time as much. Like we saw this with Fortnite, right? Fortnite was the biggest thing in gaming for a decade, and now look at it. Epic just fired 1,000 people because Fortnite was just not capable of maintaining an audience long term the way Nintendo has. But
DS and the Switch 2 be the 3DS, I could see that. I could see it being a shadow to its predecessor and not actually outselling it or selling just as much as the original Switch did. Because like I've said for well over a decade now, what makes a system successful is that it needs both pillars to make a stable platform. You need to have third-party games and
wow. Wow. The third parties have never come out for Nintendo, Rich. I don't know what Nintendo consoles you've been buying, but I've been hearing them make excuses about why they don't support Nintendo hardware since the N64. Okay. They've never put any real weight behind the N64. Switch 2 is actually really good by most third-party Nintendo support standards. We got Street Fighter 6 right away. We got Hitman. We got Rune Factory. We got a lot of options. Okay, way more than we did on Switch 1. It took forever for third parties to start putting games on Switch 1, and even then they kind of were apprehensive about it. And with Switch 2, we're actually seeing Madden made the jump over. I think all the sports games did. We're seeing a lot of these heavy hitters. It's only a matter of time until COD bends the knee as well. It's Nintendo is clearly winning over more third-party devs. So the idea that the third parties could just leave again, not going to happen, because plenty of them are finding success on Nintendo hardware. And so the entire myth that Nintendo owners don't buy third-party games is just collapsing in free fall. To the point where anybody says it's true looks like a boomer.
Robust third-party support. And you also need to have first-party games. And right now, the Nintendo Switch isn't really strong in either department. Yes, there's third-party games. Yes, there's first-party games, but let's keep it real. A lot of the first-party games are quote-unquote remastered games from the original Switch.
What? That is not true. That is not true.
Mario Wonder, they're reselling again for $70, and it's the Switch 2 edition with some add-ons. That's not a new Mario game. That's one from the Switch 1 that they're essentially just upscaling for the Switch 2. Let's keep it real.
That's not true. Like, if you actually played Mario Wonder, you know that they added a bunch of new features to it. They added some new content. Like, it's basically an expansion, honestly. So like this is another thing he didn't bring up is like the Nintendo Switch 2 editions, right? I brought up the Switch 1 games, the straight up ports that are backwards compatible, but like you also have the Switch 2 editions, which are like complete re-releases of like older Switch 1 games on Switch 2, which are all doing very, very well and are very, very popular. And like, people like Rich love the bluster about this. Like, well, they're not new games, but like, if you've never played it before, it is a new game. So Mario Wonder was a game that was pretty massively downplayed when it first came out in 2023. And so re-releasing it now with new content, with the Mario movie coming up, with Mario Galaxy coming up, like that's actually a really smart business move. And Rich just can't see it because he's a boomer. Do you really think the game being 3 years old is going to like, 2.5 years old. Do you really think that's going to lead it to not doing very well, or that it's going to lead people to like not care about it? Like, that's not true. This game is like one of the best platformers ever made. It's my favorite Mario game ever now. Okay. It's just the reality of it. And like, you really need to accept that like games like this absolutely have an audience and they absolutely do well. And they do indeed move units.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just double checked that. It's actually Super Mario Brothers Wonder is re-releasing for the Switch 2 in a couple days as of me making this video, and it's going to be $80. Oh my god.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong. If you already own the game, you can just buy the upgrade patch for $20. They always like misrepresent this fact. Okay, like the Switch 2 edition exists, which is releasing for $80, but that's $60 for the base game and then $20 for the expansion, right? If you already bought the game day one, like, you would have, if you were a serious fan, you would just have to pay the $20 for the expansion. And that's like the reality of it, I still have to pay the $20 though. Yeah, just like for every other expansion ever. I didn't see these people complaining about Shadows of the Earth Tree costing $40. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like...
Sign me up for that. Let's not forget, too, I forgot about this. Let's not forget about the Switch tax, which here's proof of it. That's very real.
What?
They wonder why their sales figures in the States aren't what they want them to be. Gee, I wonder. Tax? And then I'm going to bring this up, and I know I've mentioned it a billion damn...
Switch tax? What's he talking about?
Times. When the Switch 1 released back in 2017, what it was doing, the hybrid console concept... Nintendo was the first one to make that mainstream and the first one to do it successfully. So playing a game like Doom 2016 on the go was something that was essentially unheard of.
Okay, first of all, no, it wasn't. And second of all, Doom 2016 was shit. And I'm really tired of these fat, like old boomers acting like it was something revolutionary. Like Doom is like one of the most try-hard, fake popular PC gaming centric things imaginable. Like, it wasn't that good. It was mugged by GoldenEye. Gradius was better. Fucking like Contra was better. Doom is something that like sells itself to metalheads based on the concept, but has no like actual substance to it. Like Doom fucking sucks and has been mogged dozens of times over by better Nintendo shooters over the years.
To natively play on hardware. But the Nintendo Switch at the time was the only show in town from a mainstream perspective that was doing it. Now in 2026...
It still is. Like Steam Deck is not mainstream, ROG Ally is not mainstream, like the other alternatives are not mainstream. And I don't understand why they keep pretending like they are. Like they're not on the same league. Like I think Switch 2 outsold all of them combined like day one. It's crazy.
There are so many other options that are in the ballpark price-wise of the Nintendo Switch 2 that could do the same thing and that could play third-party games so long as the hardware is powerful enough to...
Not the superior Nintendo games, though, which is what people are buying the console for. His entire argument is that, like, well, like the third party games, though, but like people are going to buy the Switch for the Nintendo first party games and then buy whatever third party games that come out and then just completely ignore the ones that don't, or buy them on other platforms. Like, it's not that big of a deal. It's not a deal
You
breaker.
play those third-party PC ports as soon as they launch. You don't have to wait for the games to be drip-fed to you like you do on Nintendo's platform.
Wait,
For
what?
example, I tried out Resident Evil Requiem on the Steam machine, and it's not even verified, and guess what? The game ran. And what's interesting about the Steam Deck is that it came out in February of 2022. And yet it's still running current gen games like Resident Evil Requiem, which is pretty impressive. But my point being, I'm not talking
2022 was 4 years ago, you fat retard. What are you talking about? That's not impressive. You bought an overpriced piece of hardware and it can still run a game that came out like 4 years ago. And what's this talk about generations? Like, it's a fucking PC. There are no generations. Like, you just buy the most powerful chips for it. Like it's
about
not a thing.
benchmarking the Steam Deck is that if you're primarily a third-party gamer, you don't have to have Nintendo's console anymore to play third-party experiences on the go. You have plenty of other options. And on top of it, with many of those third-party games, you don't have to port beg. They'll be playable day one on the device of your choice so long as it's powerful enough to play them. Oh man, Elden Ring isn't available for the Nintendo Switch 2 yet. How am I going to play that game on the go? Oh yeah, I could play it on literally almost any other device out there that could play PC games.
First of all, nobody wants to play Elden Ring. It's dead and dusted. It's forgotten about. Nobody's looking forward to it on Switch 2. Second of all, Duskbloods is an exclusive. So your entire argument falls apart and nobody, you're just a dumbass and don't know what you're talking about.
You get what I'm saying? That's a perfect example. So the bottom line is this, Nintendo, it's not 2017 anymore. The Switch isn't the only hybrid console in town. And
It's the only relevant one, the only one that anybody uses, the only one anyone plays. The only people who talk about the Steam Deck are grifters online. That's the reality of it. It's like an audience of like a couple 100,000 people. It is like, that's the target demographic for PC. Like, it's basically the NeoGAF community.
you need, no pun intended, to step your game up when it comes to first-party exclusives. If both of those things happen in the long term, I think the Nintendo Switch 2 will end up being successful, but Nintendo needs to wake up and make their software library improve exponentially for their newest console, because right now, things ain't looking good. This is Rich of ReviewTechUSA.
Yeah, what a fucking retard. So, like, again, this kind of goes into what I've been saying, like, a lot when it comes to these people. So they downplay every major Nintendo exclusive, and then they ignore the third-party games and ignore, like, the Switch games that are getting re-released or, like, upgraded on Switch 2. Like, again, he just writes off all the games that are coming out. Like, it's like a 5-minute long cope session about how nobody would choose to play third-party games on Switch 2, about how, like, nobody wants to play old Switch 1 games again, about how the Switch 2 exclusives aren't all that good. It's just a giant cope. Like, it's just completely wrong. And it needs to be spelled out for everybody that, like, he's just kind of making it up. Okay. Nintendo's worst anti-consumer policy is being killed off. Like, what's this? Let's see. 6 days ago. This isn't about the price thing, is it?
It's not saucy at the moment, Bob.
I just wanted some sauce on those zingers.
I don't think I've ever seen a less.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're having an awesome day. A couple shameless plugs. First and foremost, make sure you subscribe to ReviewTechUSA. I upload content on pretty much a daily basis, and I stream on a fairly regular basis.
Rich. The reason I don't plug my my content on my videos is because it's not the point. And, like, I don't need to show my books to get them to sell, okay? Like, the only reason you're bringing up every video is that you're hoping that, like, somebody will pay attention to your beatboxing.
Also leave a like.
And that someone will pay attention to your ASMR. And that, like, I don't know, you'll, like, collab with some, like, land whale ASMR artist or something. I don't know what you want out of this. But, like, the simple fact of the matter is, if, like, you could grow these channels organically and make them relevant, like, you wouldn't have to shill them on your unrelated game channel. So, like,
a comment, it helps out in the algorithm. And secondly, subscribe to my ASMR channel called Tech 25 ASMR. I'll have links to everything I mentioned below in the description and top pinned comment. So shout out to non-US countries, shocker there I know, that are actually being pro-consumer and protecting consumer rights. Let's start with this. Australia is not part of the EU, but you want to know why you have an awesome return policy on Steam? Is because Australia forced their hand to have a return policy. The Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, that just rolls right off the tongue, took Valve to court, arguing that foreign companies selling digital goods to Australians must comply with Australian consumer laws. And the court sided with the ACCC. They said if you're selling a good digital or not, there has to be a return policy. And Valve was even fined 3 million Australian dollars for misleading consumers and failing to comply with those laws. And it doesn't matter that that case was in Australia. It was because of that case that we have a return policy all over the world for Steam now. And you want to know why you have a USB?
So you're telling me that like Valve has the return policy because of a lawsuit and not because like Gabe is such a nice guy?
PC port on your new iPhone now? Well, that's because of the EU. There was the EU common charging rule that mandates that all small handheld devices, including smartphones.
What the hell was that?
Your new iPhone now? Well, that's because of the EU. There was the EU common charging rule that mandates that
the fucker hit his unfunny soundboard and completely ruined his own video. And like he didn't even edit it out. Like what a fucking retard. Like what a dumbass. Unbelievable. All right, let's get back to gaming. That was insane. That was like the dumbest thing. Like how unprofessional can you get? This is his career. You know, he's been doing this for like 15 years. Like this guy, like he can't even edit a video so that it's discernible and that you can hear what he's saying. It's just awful. Just complete bullshit.